Jimmy Kimmel thought he could throw jabs at President Trump without consequences, but Karoline Leavitt made sure he regretted every single word that came out of his mouth. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Moments ago, the audience erupted as footage of President Trump's perfect golf swing filled the massive screen. His victory gesture to supporters was mirrored by a sea of Trump 2025 signs waving throughout the crowd. Now Jimmy Kimmel takes the stage, his signature smirk and confident stride commanding instant attention. "Welcome to the show, everybody," he announces to thunderous applause. Tonight's guest has become the voice behind the administration's most controversial policies. Karoline Leavitt, Trump's unflinching spokesperson and economic advisor. The president's latest tariff announcement sent markets soaring yesterday, and tonight Leavitt faces Jimmy's unrelenting questions armed with what some call Mar-a-Lago statistics, and what others consider economic brilliance. The stage is set. The tension is palpable, and Jimmy's opening line cuts through it all. Seems like the president enjoys swinging golf clubs almost as much as he enjoys swinging economic policy. The music surged as the lights danced dramatically across the stage. The audience roared with laughter and applause while Kimmel stood with arms folded, exuding confidence for what he anticipated would be an easy victory against the Trump spokesperson, who had seemingly drawn the short straw in defending the president's sudden policy shift. Kimmel adjusted his tie with a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his tone light yet pointed. "I've got some thoughts on Trump's tariff pause that we're going to dissect tonight, but first let's welcome Karoline Leavitt, the Generation Z who will attempt to explain why her boss flip-flops faster than I change my mind at a restaurant." A mixture of claps, whistles, and scattered boos erupted as Karoline Leavitt emerged from backstage. She wore a striking crimson suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek style, and her piercing gaze surveyed the crowd before locking onto Kimmel with laser-like intensity. Unlike other guests, who often appeared nervous under the studio lights, Leavitt carried herself with remarkable composure, as if entering a battlefield she had mentally prepared for hours in advance. She gave a slight nod, took her seat, and placed her hand on the microphone with mechanical precision. Kimmel winked at the audience before turning to her. "Karoline, thanks for coming. Working for Trump must be like playing golf with him. You never know when he's going to change direction, right?" The audience chuckled as the studio temperature seemed to rise with anticipation. The cameras captured Leavitt's unflinching expression, revealing not a hint of amusement at Kimmel's opening salvo. "I appreciate the invitation, Jimmy. It's always enlightening to venture beyond the Washington bubble," she responded coolly, her voice carrying a subtle undertone of challenge that wasn't lost on the more attentive audience members. Several Trump supporters in the crowd leaned forward, sensing the tension beneath her measured response. Kimmel leaned forward, his sarcasm subtle but unmistakable. "Yesterday, Trump suspended tariffs after swearing they were non-negotiable for months. He had taxed everything from steel to t-shirts, then suddenly hit pause, like he realized real tariffs aren't as straightforward as making a putt. What's your take on this dramatic reversal?" He raised an eyebrow, his smirk suggesting he expected her to crumble under pressure. Leavitt pressed her lips together, eyes fixed on Kimmel, maintaining a calculated silence that stretched just long enough to make him shift in his seat. The audience grew quieter, sensing the tactical pause before she would respond. Several MAGA supporters exchanged knowing glances, recognizing the communication strategy at play. "It wasn't a reversal, Jimmy," she finally stated, her voice clear and deliberate. "It was the execution of Phase 2 in a strategic economic realignment that's already delivering results. Yesterday's market surge of 12%, the largest single-day gain since February 2008, demonstrates precisely how effective the president's approach has been." Kimmel blinked, momentarily caught off guard by her composed delivery before recovering. "Phase 2, That's a creative way of saying we changed our minds when the markets tanked, isn't it? The audience laughed, though noticeably less enthusiastically than before. Leavitt remained unmoved. The markets responded exactly as anticipated. When President Trump implemented strategic tariffs, it created the necessary leverage to bring 180 countries to the negotiating table. Yesterday's selective suspension rewards cooperating nations while maintaining pressure on China with a 125% tariff rate. That's not abandoning a strategy, it's executing one. Kimmel turned to address the audience, his tone sharper than before. Honestly, I'm not surprised. Trump excels at creating chaos and leaving others to tidy up, just like you're doing now, Karoline. He gestured toward her with exaggerated politeness. Remember the border wall? Big promises, but Mexico paid nothing. Now tariffs, he shouted. America first, but when the markets trembled, he backed down faster than I'd abandon a bad restaurant. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Some audience members clapped in agreement, while others raised their phones to capture every moment of what was developing into an unexpectedly fierce exchange. The screen behind them showed Trump at Mar-a-Lago, golf club in hand with a broad smile. Text appeared. Tariffs paused. Strategy or panic? Kimmel pointed at the screen. Look, I'm not saying he's giving up, just that he needs a break on his favorite fairway to rethink his approach. Karoline, do you have any statistics to rescue this situation or just White House talking points printed on Trump-branded paper? Leavitt gripped the microphone, a spark flashing in her eyes that signaled she was moving from defense to offense. Since you mentioned statistics, Jimmy, let me offer some that your viewers might find enlightening. During President Trump's first term, our trade deficit with China decreased by 15% because of targeted tariffs. Their exports to us dropped from 22% to 13.5% of our total imports. That's not chaos. That's calculated economic realignment. Several audience members nodded, impressed despite themselves. Kimmel's smile flickered momentarily before he continued his syrupy mockery. I hear markets jumped 12% today after his pause. Impressive. But if tariffs are so beneficial, why not stick with them? Or is Trump worried Americans will end up paying $9 for cucumbers while he's selecting his 7-iron? The crowd roared with laughter, though some boos emerged from the conservative corner of the audience. The tension in the studio thickened. The tension was palpable now, with clear battle lines being drawn between audience factions. Do you actually believe American consumers are your primary concern, Jimmy? Or is it the corporate sponsors who benefit from cheap foreign imports? Leavitt's question landed like a perfectly aimed dart. The president's tariff strategy has already revitalized manufacturing sectors that coastal elites declared dead years ago. Visit Ohio's steel country before making jokes about economic policies you clearly don't understand. A chorus of oohs swept through the audience, followed by scattered applause from Trump supporters, who were growing increasingly vocal. Kimmel's smile tightened as the exchange took an unexpected turn. I'm not claiming to be an economist, Karoline, I'm a comedian. And from my perspective, Trump's tariff dance looks like someone who talks tough but backs down when Wall Street calls. He gestured toward the audience with both hands. Am I wrong, folks? The audience response was mixed, cheers and jeers blending into a cacophony of divided opinion. Kimmel seized the moment to press his advantage. Let me pile on here. Trump claimed tariffs would make America wealthy like the old days, yet yesterday he hit pause, leaving you to clean up the messaging. Markets rose, sure, but the Dow is still down 1,600 points since he started this game. What kind of victory is that? He smirked Trump style. I guess lose first, brag later. The crowd erupted in laughter, some standing to applaud while conservatives shouted back. Kimmel waved for quiet, glancing at Leavitt with the practiced confidence of a host who believed he'd regained control.
Karoline, now's your chance. Can you explain why Trump paused and still call it a win, or is he just taking a halftime break to work on his swing?
Karoline Leavitt sat up straight, gripping the microphone like a weapon, her icy gaze piercing Jimmy Kimmel. He had just finished his barrage with a self-satisfied grin, winking at the audience as if victory was assured. But Leavitt didn't allow him to bask in the moment. The studio cameras captured her composed yet fierce expression as she prepared her counterattack. She cleared her throat, her voice resonating throughout the studio with commanding clarity.
Jimmy, you excel at generating laughs, I'll grant you that. But if you want to discuss economics and American jobs, let me provide some numbers instead of your cheap punchlines.
The audience fell silent momentarily, then scattered applause erupted from the conservative section. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, his smile lingering, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his expression. The show had suddenly shifted from entertainment to intellectual combat, and not everyone was prepared for the transition. Leavitt leaned forward, her tone steady yet razor-sharp.
You just claimed Trump paused tariffs yesterday out of panic, a defeat. I wonder if you ever leave that host chair to check the markets. But allow me to enlighten you. Today, markets surged 12%, the most significant leap since February 2008. What have you accomplished lately? Or do you just clutch a microphone and joke around in your Hollywood bubble?
Cheers exploded, especially from those waving
Trump 2025
signs. Kimmel opened his mouth to interrupt, but Leavitt raised her hand, her voice overpowering his. The audience fell quiet, sensing they were witnessing a rare moment of genuine confrontation rather than scripted television banter.
I'm not finished, Jimmy. You suggest Trump back down because he fears Americans will pay higher prices. Wrong. Yesterday, the president suspended tariffs with over 180 countries, except China, which faces a 125% rate. That's negotiating from a position of strength. That's not panic, it's strategy. Do you understand strategy? Or just how to crack jokes for ratings?
The crowd split in their reaction, half chuckled at her comeback, half whistled in protest. Kimmel shrugged, attempting to regain ground through casual dismissal. The cameras caught his slightly reddened complexion, a telltale sign that Leavitt's response had landed more effectively than he'd anticipated.
Oh, Karoline, no doubt you're skilled with numbers, he said. But what about the Dow's 1,600-point drop? What kind of strategy produces that?
He smirked, waiting for her to falter under the weight of this seemingly devastating counterpoint. Leavitt offered a faint smile, eyes blazing with intellectual intensity.
1,600 points before tariffs, our trade deficit with China exceeded $400 billion annually. During Trump's first term, it decreased by 15% thanks to tariffs. Yesterday, he paused not because he failed, but because he has other nations begging at the negotiating table. You call that failure? I call it victory. The kind you can't comprehend from your Hollywood perspective. Trump! Trump!
Chants thundered through the studio, some audience members jumping up with signs held high. The camera zoomed in on Kimmel, his forced laugh faltering as he tapped the desk to interrupt. But Leavitt continued with relentless precision. Sensing her momentum, she turned to the crowd.
Jimmy loves his golf jokes and $9 cucumber comments. Hilarious. But while he sits here joking, President Trump is working to protect American jobs. Want to mock him? Visit Ohio and ask steel workers what tariffs did for them. Or do you prefer hiding in your mansion, laughing at hard-working Americans?
The studio erupted with shouts of,
"Go Karoline!"
drowning out the faint chuckles from Kimmel's supporters. He waved for calm, clinging to sarcasm as his defensive shield. The director cut to a wide shot revealing more audience members now standing and cheering for Leavitt than anyone had anticipated.
Karoline, you're impressive, Kimmel said. But if tariffs are so wonderful, why not maintain them? Pausing sounds more like retreat than victory.
His tone remained confident, but his body language betrayed growing discomfort with the direction of the interview. Leavitt locked eyes with him, fire in her gaze.
Not maintain them? You don't understand negotiation, Jimmy. Yesterday, Trump implemented a 90-day grace period for cooperating nations like Canada and Mexico to force concessions on border security and fentanyl trafficking. China gets no break because they play unfairly. That's wielding tariffs as a weapon, not retreating. Have you ever made anyone compromise with your jokes? Or do you just make them laugh?
The crowd erupted again, applause and cheers filling the studio. Kimmel flushed, forcing a laugh to mask his discomfort. The cameras caught his awkward shifting in his seat, a rare sight for the usually composed host.
Well, I make them laugh every night. That's a negotiation too,
he replied. But his response fell flat in the electrified atmosphere. Several audience members exchanged glances, sensing the balance of power had shifted dramatically on stage. Leavitt leaned closer, her voice cutting like a blade.
Jimmy, you mocked Trump for relaxing on the golf course. I returned to work 4 days.
After giving birth to support his administration, how long do you rest after each show to develop new jokes? The president doesn't rest. He adjusts strategy to secure bigger wins. Call that losing if you want, but look at today's markets and the jobs we've saved. Then ask yourself, who's really the punchline? Yes, Karoline. Cheers surged like waves, with more audience members standing, especially from the back rows. The camera panned across the crowd, capturing ecstatic faces hoisting
Trump 2025
signs. The production team, clearly unprepared for this level of audience engagement, scrambled to adapt lighting and sound to accommodate the evolving dynamic. Kimmel tapped the desk, trying to reclaim the atmosphere.
Karoline, you're formidable, I'll give you that. But I maintain that Trump paused out of fear. Numbers don't change that impression.
He winked, hoping to win back some audience support through his trademark casual charm. Leavitt didn't yield an inch. She rose slightly from her chair, her voice commanding attention throughout the studio.
I don't operate on impressions, Jimmy. I work with facts. Fact, Trump reduced China's exports to us from 22% to 13.5% over 6 years. Fact, yesterday, he paused to force other nations to negotiate, not to retreat. Want impressions? Feel this applause. That's Americans recognizing who's fighting for them. Not you.
Kimmel rubbed his chin, forcing a grin, but his eyes revealed his unease. The audience remained divided, half chanted,
Trump,
supporting Leavitt, while half waited for Kimmel's comeback. He cleared his throat, waiting for calm in what appeared to be a desperate bid to regain control of his own show.
All right, Karoline, I'll admit it. You make statistics more engaging than my writer's scripts. But don't worry, I've got plenty of jokes to lure Trump away from that golf course.
Scattered laughter followed, but the energy had noticeably shifted. The cameras captured audience members who had previously been laughing at Kimmel's jokes now watching with newfound respect for Leavitt's commanding presence. Kimmel leaned toward Leavitt, attempting to revive his sarcasm.
You say Trump's tariff pause is strategic. Sounds nice. But if he's such a skilled negotiator, why didn't he make China capitulate from the beginning? I'm no expert, but 125% tariffs while pausing with 180 countries seems like half victory, half defeat.
He winked, hoping for laughs to salvage his position. Leavitt's lip twitched, her gaze unwavering.
Half victory, half defeat, Jimmy? Do you read news or just comedy scripts? China's exports to us fell from 22% to 13.5% because of tariffs. That's capitulation. Pausing with others maximizes our leverage, not surrender. Do you understand optimization, or just how to optimize ratings? Trump 2025.
Cheers surged, drowning out Kimmel's faint chuckles. He blushed visibly, now tapping the desk and cutting in with growing desperation. The production team cut to commercial break graphics earlier than scheduled, attempting to provide their host with breathing room.
We'll be right back with more from Karoline Leavitt after these messages,
Kimmel announced, his voice noticeably strained as the cameras continued rolling for online content. The tension in the studio remained palpable. When the segment resumed, Kimmel had composed himself somewhat, though his usual relaxed demeanor appeared more calculated than natural.
Welcome back to our conversation with Karoline Leavitt, President Trump's spokesperson. Karoline, before the break, you were explaining the strategy behind yesterday's tariff pause. Let's take this opportunity to hear from our audience. Does anyone have questions for our guest?
A middle-aged man wearing a bright red MAGA shirt stood up immediately, hand raised high like a victory flag. The production assistant approached with a microphone, though Kimmel's expression suggested this hadn't been the planned audience interaction portion of the show.
I have a question for Karoline,
the man announced, his voice booming through the studio with unexpected clarity. Kimmel nodded, gesturing with forced hospitality.
Go ahead, buddy. Keep it brief, though. We're on a schedule.
The man turned to Leavitt, eyes gleaming with admiration.
Karoline, you just schooled Jimmy with facts. Absolutely epic. But how do we counter media personalities like him who constantly criticize Trump with jokes instead of engaging with his policies? We're tired of their baseless mockery.
MAGA supporters applauded thunderously, with shouts of,
"Go Karoline!"
emanating from the back of the studio. Kimmel's smile froze in place as he realized the audience question had further undermined his position. Leavitt smiled, adjusting the microphone with practiced precision, her voice resonating with newfound warmth.
Thank you for that question. The only solution is truth, which I brought tonight. Trump suspended tariffs yesterday not to retreat, but to secure greater victory. When I presented facts, markets up 12%, deficits down 15%, their jokes became meaningless.
She glanced at Kimmel, her eyes icy.
The media can joke all they want, but Americans know who's truly fighting for them, not Hollywood elites.
Applause erupted like thunder, some audience members jumping up to cheer. Kimmel shrugged, interrupting with transparent desperation.
I'm not criticizing, just entertaining. But let's continue. Who's next?
He scanned the crowd, his eyes betraying a hint of panic as he searched for a friendly face. A young woman rose from the middle section, holding a
Trump 2025
sign like a trophy. She called out,
"Question for Jimmy. You mock Trump on tariffs, but have you ever visited an Ohio steel mill to see how his policies save jobs? My father works at one, and his plant was saved by those tariffs you're joking about."
MAGA applause drowned out murmurs from the opposition. Kimmel smiled awkwardly, clearly unprepared for this direct personal challenge.
Me? I'm busy with the show, haven't been to Ohio. But I doubt Trump visits frequently either, right?
He winked, hoping for laughs to regain his footing, but the audience response was tepid at best. Leavitt interjected, her voice unyielding.
You don't go, but Trump has. Tariffs preserve thousands of Ohio jobs. Check the data instead of speculating from your host chair. Or do you consider American workers merely punchlines for your program? Yes, Karoline,
resounded through the studio. More audience members stood, forcing Kimmel to wave again for quiet. The cameras captured his increasingly desperate attempts to maintain composure as the show spiraled beyond his control. He rubbed his chin, attempting to maintain his sarcasm.
Karoline, you're fierce. I appreciate it. But I'm not mocking workers. I'm mocking Trump for suspending tariffs like someone in a panic. Anyone else have a question?
His voice faded, like someone running out of material and confidence simultaneously. an older man stood from the back wearing a red MAGA cap, his voice deep and resonant.
I'm not asking Jimmy, I'm addressing Karoline. You made us proud tonight. Trump suspended tariffs to protect us, correct? He's playing chess while these media types play checkers.
Applause erupted before Leavitt could answer. She nodded, her voice warm yet pointed.
Exactly. Yesterday, the president implemented a 90-day grace period to shield Americans from price increases while maintaining pressure on China. That's protection, not panic. And I'm proud to represent his voice here tonight among those who actually understand economic strategy.
The audience exploded with Trump 2025 chants, overwhelming the background music. Kimmel waved frantically, trying to reclaim control of his own studio. The camera caught beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the studio's powerful air conditioning.
Okay, MAGA supporters are both. But does anyone agree with me? Trump paused because he's fearful of market reaction. Raise your hands.
A few timid hands appeared, but the weak applause was overwhelmed by shouts of,
"Go Karoline!"
The balance of the room had shifted dramatically since the segment began. The camera swept across the audience, capturing enthusiastic faces with MAGA signs held high. Kimmel turned to Leavitt, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes.
Karoline, I didn't expect you to bring a cheering section. But I have my online viewers. They'll support me, right?
He winked, but laughter was scarce. Production assistants could be seen frantically conferring at the edges of the stage. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice cutting through the chaos.
Online, they'll witness your defeat by truth tonight, Jimmy. I don't need a cheering section. I have facts. Trump reduced China's exports to us from 22% to 13.5% and saved American jobs while strengthening our negotiating position globally. What do you have, besides golf jokes, to mask your fundamental misunderstanding of international economics? Yes, Karoline
erupted more forcefully than ever, a firestorm consuming Kimmel's efforts. He raised both hands, sarcasm subtle but desperation obvious.
Fine, Karoline. You're making me want to fact-check during the show with a spreadsheet. But I'm still funnier, right, folks?
He turned to the audience, but Trump 2025 chants and applause for Leavitt thundered, extinguishing his final hope of salvaging the segment through humor. Karoline smirked faintly, adjusting the microphone with practiced precision.
Jimmy, you control the microphone, but I possess the truth. Tonight, I came to defend President Trump's economic strategy, and I succeeded. You mocked his tariffs, but facts demolished your jokes. Markets up 12%, China facing 125%. Say whatever you wish, but Americans recognize who's fighting for them, not you. Yes!
Boomed through the studio, forcing Kimmel to wave again as if requesting a truce. He smiled awkwardly, attempting a self-deprecating tone to recover some dignity.
Well, Karoline, you're formidable. I didn't anticipate a spokesperson transforming my comedy show into an economics lecture. I'm taking notes for later. I simply wanted laughs, but it seems they're cheering more for you tonight.
He addressed the audience.
See? I brought jokes, Karoline brought statistics. And clearly, statistics are winning viewership. Who supports her?
Trump 2025, and cheers resounded like thunder, drowning scattered murmurs from his supporters. The production team signaled desperately for him to wrap up the segment, as it had clearly veered far off script. Kimmel rubbed his hands, feigning confidence while visibly sweating.
All right, no more statistics battles. The audience clearly favors you.
Leavitt leaned forward, her voice calm yet incisive.
Jimmy, you're not destroyed, just defeated by truth. Yesterday, Trump suspended tariffs to protect Americans and force other nations to negotiate. You call it panic, I call it victory. And this audience knows I'm right.
Trump 2025 surged again, more standing, shaking the studio like a battlefield. Production assistants began moving through the crowd, attempting to quiet the most vocal supporters. Kimmel raised both hands, sarcasm subtle but resignation evident.
Karoline, I'm speechless. You make statistics shine brighter than my stage lights. I have my microphone and some humor left, but tonight, you're the star. Here's my summary. I mocked Trump for pausing tariffs. Karoline arrived and turned me into a student of economics. Who's ahead, folks?
He turned to the audience, but before anyone could respond,
Karoline!
And,
Yes, Karoline!
crashed like a tsunami, overwhelming any lingering laughter. He looked at Leavitt, smiling stiffly, acknowledging defeat through gritted teeth.
See? You won over the crowd. But I'm still funnier, right?
His voice carried a desperate plea for reassurance in his own domain. Leavitt responded, her voice sharp as a sword.
Humor won't shield you from truth, Jimmy. Trump's working for Americans. You merely entertain them. I believe they choose jobs over your jokes tonight. Go!
Karoline exploded, nearly the entire audience standing, leaving Kimmel slumping as if defeated. The camera focused on him, face flushed as though his reputation had taken a serious blow, while Leavitt remained calm and commanding. The contrast could not have been more stark, a host floundering in his own studio while his guests maintained perfect composure. Leavitt adjusted the microphone one final time, her voice authoritative.
Jimmy, no comeback needed. The truth speaks for itself. President Trump is making America great again, and I'm proud to transform this stage into his platform tonight.
Applause and,
Yes, Karoline!
Cheers erupted, drowning out the swelling music like a victory symphony. The camera pulled back, showing Kimmel sitting there flustered and forcing a smile like a defeated opponent, as Leavitt stood waving to the crowd, her sharp eyes like those of a general who had claimed the battlefield.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Kimmel managed through a strained smile, signaling frantically for a commercial break as the studio erupted into near chaos. The production team scrambled to restore order, while Leavitt remained standing, acknowledging the thunderous applause with gracious nods. The segment had transformed from a planned mockery into an unexpected triumph for Karoline Leavitt and the administration she represented. As the cameras continued recording for online content, Kimmel could be seen whispering urgently to his producers, his usual confidence shattered by the unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, Leavitt gathered her notes calmly, the hint of a victorious smile playing at the corners of her mouth. What had begun as a routine late-night comedy segment had evolved into a viral moment that would be dissected across news platforms and social media for weeks to come, with millions of viewers witnessing a rare moment of television where the carefully constructed narrative collapsed under the weight of prepared facts and unwavering conviction. The following morning, as clips of the exchange spread across the internet, one comment would summarize the night perfectly. Jimmy brought jokes. Karoline brought facts. Facts 1. The unexpected triumph would serve as a blueprint for future media appearances, demonstrating that even on hostile ground, preparation and conviction could transform an ambush into a victory.